This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp to provide you with access to the largest online therapy service in the world. And it can all be done from the comfort of your own home, from a phone, tablet or laptop. No commute, cutting down travel costs, and most importantly, it's affordable. With over 1,000 therapists in the UK, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a wide variety of expertise in mental health. If you need someone to talk to and you're thinking of giving therapy a go, BetterHelp is a great option. And being a listener of the podcast, you get 10% off. That's 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/lifeandfilm. That's betterhelp.com/lifeandfilm. Welcome to A Life in Film. I'm Elliot James Langridge. I'm an actor, writer, and apparently a podcaster, and I love film. This is the podcast that we ask our guests from in front and behind the camera, how did they get their foot in the door? What was the key to unlocking their success? What's their story? Previous guests include Toby Jones, Sam Clement, Natalie Emmanuel, Andrea Riseborough, and Tony Curran, to name a few. Over the years, our guest has directed over 850 commercials. Now he's in the world of film and TV. His latest project is Marvel's Secret Invasion, with an astonishing cast including Samuel L Jackson himself. Our guest today is director Selim.
It's a life in film. 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 Woo!
Thank you. Hey, Ali.
Oh, it's you again.
I know. Sorry, man. I can't believe it.
Right.
The minute we came off the call the first time round, I was doing it what I usually do, click on it, choose where it's going to go, and then the computer was like, oh no. Absolutely no. We're all done now. The computer is updated, everything is good, Zoom is ready, so it's all good this time.
It's all good on my end. It's a pleasure to see you again.
Oh, pleasure to see you. How was your trip?
Really amazing. I'm a little surprised I'm here. That's how amazing it was. I have no desire to make film anymore. I want to be a shepherd in Slovenia.
Fury, we gotta be very careful now.
I had to pinch myself many mornings when I would step on set with Olivia Colman, Sam Jackson, Don Cheadle, Emilia Clarke, Ben Mendelsohn, Kingsley Ben-Adir. I mean, some of my favorite actors in the world.
Alone at last. After every Marvel film released, I would phone my agent and say, please, can I be in a Marvel thing? I never imagined it would happen.
What makes you think you can get him to speak?
Oh, I can be quite persuasive.
Looking at the MCU through these different lenses, you get to see all these different sides of the characters. And we get to really sort of dig into who they are.
How much do you know about your security detail?
What do you mean, how much do I know about it?
This idea of who can you trust, that is really the heart of the show.
You could be talking to somebody you have a very close relationship with, and then you find out that that's not who you thought it was.
It becomes sort of a cat and mouse game that we build toward to the end of the show.
You can't predict it, and you can't preempt it, and you can't fathom it until it happens.
I'm Nick Fury. Even when I'm out, I'm in.
Since we last talked, obviously watching more episodes of the show, I started to spot places. I think I know where you were shooting them, but I'm not too sure. One of the one I wanted to ask you about was the airport that you shot at, this end of episode 4, and the convoy gets attacked. Is that near Guildford? Is that a airport near Guildford where they shoot Top Gear?
Yeah.
It is. I knew it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that.
We shot so much out there. Dunsfold, it's called.
Dunsfold. That's it. Yes. Yeah. I should know the name. It's not far from where I live. But
it's a decommissioned World War II Air Force base, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we shot so much stuff out there because we owned it for such a long time that every time we lost a location, people would say, how about Dunsfold? So we just kept going out there and shooting. Near Guildford, I slept in Guildford a few nights.
Very nice. Yeah. Cobbled streets of Guildford. It's it's kind of a big village almost. Yeah, not far from where I live actually. So it's one of those places that I'm quite familiar with. And it's one of those sets as well where you see the airport and you see that strip. It's kind of, you see it in a lot of movies. Whoever owns that place must be making a lot of money because they got a couple of planes there, haven't they, as well?
Yeah.
Which they rent out for filming. And yeah, it's just funny how you see places like that. You're like, oh wow, yeah, really recognizable. But anyway, Ali, yeah, obviously starting with your career, the way you've obviously done lots and lots of commercials before you've gone into film and television and everything else like that. And I'm going to be honest with the audience here. We've chatted before, and the last time we were chatting, you told me that you'd done, I believe it was over 800 commercials, which blew my mind. How when you were doing this stint of commercials, how many would you do like in the year? Was it kind of, I can't even imagine how many.
Yeah, I mean it's true that I did 856 TV commercials. It's a little bit of a trick though, in that, you know, the truly creative ones where there was a beginning and a middle and an end, and you approach them as a unique, discrete production, probably in the range of 250. Different client, different story, different casting, different actor, different thing, and then you'd make one commercial in itself. A lot of the other ones were early on. I had a couple of like retail accounts where we would literally shoot 5 commercials in a weekend, but you know, a spokesperson saying on sale this weekend, and then we cut to the product shot. And I did a lot of those, and the reason I list them is they're just such a great film school. You know, those people don't, as long as the toilet paper and the M&Ms and the barbecue sauce looks good, they don't really know what's going on. And so you're using different lenses and you're using different cameras and you're, you know, shooting in a slightly different way with a slightly different crew, and you learn a lot. It's a really great way to learn filmmaking. I'm not going to say it's like film school, but it is a version of film school.
I mean, some of the absolute greats have come from commercials as well. I mean, Ridley Scott is obviously an example that people always use, but yeah, I mean, I can imagine it must be you're getting to do so many different products, so many different things, and it must be everyone's kind of slightly different. So it must be a great way to learn. But I'm intrigued to hear, how did you get into that in the first place? What was the initiation into commercials and actually getting into sort of directing?
I think I was always interested in storytelling of some form. You know, I think I wanted to be a novelist like Ernest Hemingway. I wanted to be drunk and sitting in a cafe in Paris. But that ended 50 years before I was born. And my dad came from Egypt, and he became a professor who taught in the classroom for 50 years. And the first guy to hire him in the classroom back in the 50s was the head of the economics department at the University of Minnesota, Ed Cohen. And Ed's 2 boys, Joel and Ethan, are great filmmakers. And I grew up around their shadow. I know them a little bit. They're a little older than me, so we weren't friends when we were young. But when they started to do it, I was like, oh, it's not Hollywood, a big monolithic thing where these movies come from. It's just those guys. It's just Ed's kids who can make movies, so I can too. And I think that was kind of not really an inspiration as much as it just opened the door to possibility that this is how these things get made. And I wasn't making film early on. I was just trying to get into production and figure out what it was. And it was a great time in Minnesota where I lived, where I think 2 things were happening, where Hollywood was decentralizing a little bit and going out to location more, going to non-union places more where they could take advantage of non-union rates or tax credits. And Minnesota was a great landing place, I think partly because of Prince, who was on the rise in that era. And there was always a Prince music video or a Purple Rain being shot or something like that. And so there was literally production on every street corner, and you could stand and watch it. And 9 times out of 10, they would reach out into the crowd and say, "We need help. There aren't enough people here. Can you buy donuts?" "Sure, I can buy donuts." "Can you location scout?" "Sure, I can location scout." That was coupled with a couple of upstart agencies. You know, Minneapolis and Chicago are places where ad agencies are, you know, product oriented. They do Procter and Gamble, and they're enormous corporations. And a couple of guys broke off back in that era and landed very big creative accounts like BMW or you know, things like that, where they had full creative reign. And so commercials started to be shot in Minnesota, and a lot of production companies sprouted up out of that. So there was always work, and it was a great way to learn the hierarchy, to learn what it meant to location scout, learn what it meant to buy donuts, which is all important stuff, right? And I knocked around that for not long before I realized there is a hierarchy and there's no hierarchy. If you want to direct, you direct. And so I just started telling people I was a director, and landed a couple of gigs. And I think the second job I directed won the Gold Lion at the Cannes Film Festival, Cannes Advertising Film Festival. So suddenly it puts you in a different light. You're not telling people you're a director, you actually are. And then I could add award-winning to my resume after I'd only shot a couple of commercials, and kind of the top award in advertising. So that moved me through the advertising world pretty quickly and broadly.
Can I ask what that particular commercial was that you won the award for? Because we chatted about this before, didn't we? Was it the YMCA?
YMCA, yeah. It was a public service announcement, and they had no money for it. And I think that's why they were just looking for somebody to shoot it, because it was such a great idea. A couple is lying in bed, and you just watch them for 30 seconds, and you literally get to the point where you're like, what the hell is this? He's snoring, she's snoring, and then her foot comes out from under the covers and rubs the bottom of his foot. And as it fades to black, the voiceover says, "Imagine what life would be like without kids." And you go, and then it says YMCA summer camp. So they get rid of your kids, and you can sleep in late and have sex in the morning.
I'm gonna have to find a clip of that and put it in.
it just, like, it was a perfect concept written by Clarity Coverdale ad agency, and I have to take credit for it because I was there, but it's also one of those great concepts where just don't screw it up. Just stand out of the way and let it. And I think it was a great lesson for me about how powerful scripts can be and ideas can be, and how there are times where, I watch directors impose themselves, and suddenly you feel the director bigger than the story or bigger than the idea. So pretty early on, I found this really valuable lesson where just let it happen, don't force it. And I think it came out of that commercial.
Commercials are those, I mean, there's commercials that I remember from my childhood that if they're effective, like that idea where it's something so simple and you can remember it so clearly. It might not be a reference for you so much, but we had an advert in the 90s, and it was for Barclaycard, and it was always I think it was Rowan Atkinson that was in it, actually.
Looking for his Barclaycard, sir. His Barclaycard? This man's in no state to go shopping.
No, I'm going to phone him up for medical advice, sir.
You're going to phone Barclaycard for medical advice?
Barclaycard International Rescue, sir. They can send doctors.
Look, we're wasting time here, Boff. This man has a serious case of snakebite, and there's only one thing that's going to save him. I'm going to have to locate the wound and suck out the poison. Yes, actually, I think perhaps you better phone Barclaycard, Boff. I'm not sure I've got there. My lips were a little...
Yeah, it's something that you really remember. And I suppose doing all the commercials that you've done, I mean, the list is crazy. Correct me if I'm wrong, but like McDonald's, Blockbuster, Reebok, all these huge companies that, they've already got a brand, they've already got a kind of look to them. When you're working on a commercial with a brand that big, do you get much kind of freedom to play? Or as you say, do you have to kind of step away and let the advert kind of speak for itself and get out the way of it?
Well, I think those are two different things. I guess my comment about stepping out of the way is more about there are perfect concepts out there where the story is unfolding and the director is creating an environment in which the story can unfold in the way it's meant to unfold, in an unforced way. Your next question is more about creative freedom in a big corporate consensus world. And I will say you're at a little bit of an advantage over people who live in the United States in that every year we line up outside the Walker Art Center in Minneapolis to go watch British adverts because they're so good, right? They're all stories. They're all funny, beginning, middle, and an end. You can learn so much from those. Here there's a lot of pressure on money. There's a lot of pressure on, once they make the commercial, they have to spend $100 million buying airtime. So there is a lot of pressure on those people. And, if they buy into the story, they want to see it happen as well as you want to see it happen, as well as I want to see it happen, because that's what we're there doing, is telling a story about a guy whose heartburn is so bad that he had to sleep on the couch. And you can make that a great story, or the answer to that story is take this medication, or you can make a commercial all about that medication. And I think sometimes the companies feel so much pressure that they just want the medication to show up in the beginning, at which point you have no story, you have no answer, you have no setup, you have nothing. And then there are other times where I think the only thing they understand is their product shot. And I've done commercials where we shoot actors doing dialogue for days on end. And then on the last day, we shoot the product shot on the table, and I'll turn around and there'll be 50 clients behind me watching exactly how that bottle gets lit, right? And it's all different, but I think the commercials we remember are the commercials like you're talking about. There's a story and there's a great line and there's a great performance. But, I did a lot of healthcare, pharmaceutical advertising because that kind of ended up being my niche. And it's all the same. I mean, you watch it today. I haven't done an advert for 15 years at this point, and it's all the same that it was 15 years ago. So no creative freedom. Clearly, I'm not on the set. I'm not experiencing that oppression, but they're just doing the same thing over and over and over.
Mm-hmm. Well, even we have, I don't know if it would be something you'd be familiar with, but the John Lewis Christmas advert is a big thing over here.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Do you get that over there where you are?
No, we don't get it, but we go to the Walker Art Center to watch them. Yeah, they're all in there. Yeah.
And the key to that is, as you say, is the story in it. And it's almost a competition every Christmas between Sainsbury's, John Lewis, and all these companies that are all trying to outdo themselves. Which advert can make you cry the most? But it's kind of funny because now it really is every year. It's like, so what are they going to do this year? A different kind of pressure, I guess. But
but that's good pressure, and I think that's good for people who watch TV because it's so live. Here, they would just turn to just show the hamburger, just show the linens on sale, and we don't need any of that other stuff. And I think that's the brilliance of British advertising is it's so focused on story.
Mm-hmm. And obviously you say that the last advert you did, commercial, was 15 years ago. Obviously you've done music videos, you've done film, you've done TV, all these other things. But do you have obviously the last project you did most recently was TV, but do you have a format that you prefer, something that you've enjoyed the most? Obviously your movie that you actually wrote as well, Sweetland, that must have been a pretty amazing experience to be able to direct something you've written. But do you have a favorite? Because they're all they're very different in their own right.
Well, commercials were a great training ground. And I am very grateful that I had the opportunity to do it. But I don't know that I have a strong emotional pull towards advertising. Even when I was doing it, I really believed we were just promoting shit that nobody really needed to buy, right? And so I'm not really drawn to that world. And I love, making my film was deeply personal, and it was a long time in the making. So it was less about the excitement of having something, being able to direct something that I'd written, and it was more about, oh my God, I'm making this after all this time. And it was deeply personal. I mean, it was a story that it came from a short story by my friend Will Weaver, and I think it honors the story, but it also, my grandparents are in it, my parents are in it, not acting in it, but like their spirit is in it, right? And at one point when I was shooting, the producer Jim Bigham, who's a longtime friend of mine, and we'd been in advertising for probably 15, 20 years together, making commercials. By the time we got to make Sweetland together, he came over to me and whispered, have fun, because this is the last time you'll be able to make a film without adult supervision. And he's right. Like, I think we made a pretty good film, and we had no adult supervision, and we had no notes. We had to figure it out ourselves. That was a great environment. That being said, I really love being part of a show. I love being in a writer's room. I was in the writer's room on Looming Tower, and it was, unfolding story with 6, 7 of the great television minds unfolding story with you. Like, that's a high that you don't get on an independent film set, where you're spending your own money a lot of the time and, trying to figure it out. So I love that. I love being in a writer's room. And I don't know how it would feel to go back and make an independent film again today. I might feel not quite as satisfied as I do working in some of the television stuff that I've been doing, where I'm in the writer's room and I'm helping produce it, and I'm in the director's chair, and you're part of something bigger than yourself, and you don't always get to tell it the way you think it should be told, but 9 times out of 10 you learn, oh, there's a better, more interesting way, and I wouldn't have learned that if I were alone. So did I remotely answer your question, or did I just ramble on?
No, you did very much. But obviously touching on Sweetland, and you saying it took a long time to get off the ground. Can you let us in on the secret of how you actually got that green lit, and what was the process of actually getting the movie made?
Yeah, greenlit I know what that term means. It doesn't really apply to Sweetland, right? There's no Hollywood anything involved. There's no single money person saying go. I bought the rights to the short story in 1990. I read a short story that was published in the Sunday magazine supplement to the Minneapolis newspaper, and it made me cry. And I thought, if I'm going to cry, other people are going to cry too. And I think that's a pretty good reason to make a film. I laughed. I think other people will laugh. I cried. I think other people will cry. But I had no idea how to make a film. I was shooting commercials at the time and believing that I wanted to make a film. And I wrote a script, having never written a script before. And I'm sure it was shit. And I carried it around and tried to figure it out. And then I shot some more commercials, and I did another rewrite. And then I talked to some people who'd raised money for a film and knew how to do it. And I learned from them, and I did another rewrite. And all the while I kept trying to raise money. I kept trying to figure out, like, how do you knock on doors and ask somebody for $25,000, right? And you get whatever, 50 of those people, and then you got like $1 million budget, and you can make it work, I think. So I tried that for a long time, all the while shooting TV commercials and coaching Little League baseball and raising a family. And, so I was a very busy guy. I wasn't knocking on doors for 10 years, but trying to figure it out. And then I wrote a draft that I shared with a young actor who I had cast in an A1 steak sauce commercial when he was right out of college. And he ended up being one of the great writers in Hollywood today. He wrote the film Capote, and he was the showrunner on In Treatment. But at the time I met him, he was just a young actor who was acting in an A1 steak sauce commercial. And we remained friends, and I gave him a draft, and he was moved by it. And I think he was moved by maybe the success of the script came out of my naivete. Like, I was just writing emotion. I wasn't really structuring it or something. And I think actors sometimes feel like that's what's missing in a script that's so tightly structured that they can't feel it. Years after I made the film, an actress said to me, she's an actress of some note who was directing a movie, and she was looking for a writer, and she really liked the film Sweetland. But when we met, she said, I don't know if I'm going to hire you, because I don't think your film was really written. I think it was just felt. And I thought, what a great, like, I'm sorry I didn't get the job, but what a great way to think of it. So I got to this point where I had sort of amassed a lot of frustration and a small group of actors who were of some note. I mean, at the time, Dan was in Birdcage with Robin Williams, and Alan Cumming, I'd met him through mutual friends, and he was on board, and he was finishing the anniversary party and bringing other actors on. So actors were responding to this felt script, whatever that means. And I think it just reached a fever pitch where my frustration voiced to my friends back in Minnesota, and they started to write those checks. They were like, go do it. And I think in some way, some of the actors meant something to them, or maybe didn't, but it wasn't like, oh, we can get this film distributed based on these names or whatever. It was just, go make your goddamn film and stop whining about it. And so that's a little different than a green light, right? It's more like, let's go do it. And it worked. I mean, it succeeded because everybody was passionate, because we knew a lot about that story, and we didn't have a lot of constraints about what a film is or how you market a film. We just told the story. And Ned Beatty, who's a great actor, the late great Ned Beatty, he came on board because he had married a woman, I think his fourth wife. He had married a woman who lived in northern Minnesota, and he loved it, and he moved up there with her. And so he literally drove down to the set. He was like, I'll come do it. And he drove a couple hours to the set. And at the end of it, he said, I haven't had this much fun in a long time. And he gave us his check back. He gave us his fee back. He was just put it in the budget. I know you need it. So that film just it had a lot of that going on, rather than it got greenlit and we made it and we distributed it. It just had a lot of handmade love in it. And it was a real high, but I couldn't do that again, because I'm not naive anymore. Well, I'm naive about a lot of stuff, but I know how to make a film now. And so I don't think I could make a film that was felt, nor do I want to make a film on my dining room table, which is what I did. I had my 9-year-old daughter helping me put stickers on festival marketing posters. It's a real handmade effort. And I don't want to do that.
I'm going to check it out for sure. Now that we've talked about it a couple of times, I really want to see it. And can I ask what the budget ended up being? You did mention $1 million there, but I don't know if that was.
It was $1 million. It was $1 million.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great, because I watched the trailer and was just kind of looking at the details on it, and it's amazing that a movie that looks like that can end up being costing $1 million. I mean that's I don't even know what that's cast as, micro budget, but that's insane. A film that actually gets seen with that budget as well is impressive. Now for a quick break. Are you a writer, director, actor, costume designer, perhaps makeup artist? Are you interested in camera? This is the place to share your journey. We want to hear from you. How did you start your career? Has it started yet? And perhaps, if you're feeling brave, share with us your most embarrassing film-related moment. So slip into our DMs at Life in Film Pod on Instagram. Check out the Patreon at patreon.com/Life in Film, where you'll get episodes early and uncut, amongst other treats. And don't forget to follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you enjoy this episode, please leave us a positive rating. Add us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok at Life in Film Pod, and find our video episodes on YouTube by searching Elliot James Langridge Life in Film. Essentially, please like and subscribe everything. It makes a huge difference. Thank you. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. Do you work in the film industry? Are you freelance? Or perhaps you have a 9-to-5? No matter what you do, mental health affects us all. I struggled early on in my career with the uncertainty of if and when I would ever work again, struggling to pay my bills, or simply with anxiety. Don't know about you, but being an actor, it's very important for me to maintain structure in the downtimes, and I found not only exercise, but talking to someone for me was a game changer. And so Life in Film has partnered with BetterHelp to provide you with access to the largest online therapy service in the world. And it can all be done from the comfort of your own home, from a phone, tablet or laptop. No commute, cutting down travel costs, and most importantly, it's affordable. With over 1,000 therapists in the UK, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a wide variety of expertise in mental health. If you need someone to talk to and you're thinking of giving therapy a go, BetterHelp is a great option. And being a listener of the podcast, you get 10% off. That's 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/Life in Film. That's betterhelp.com/Life in Film. And back to the show.
So you don't have any sort of any chance that you might do another movie like that at some point? You think that was kind of a lightning in a bottle moment for you?
It's a good question. I would love to make a film again. I think in many ways film is still relevant. I think it's going through an upheaval now with streamers and all these strikes, and we don't know where it's going to end up. But I mean, I'm a child of the 70s. I grew up with Hal Ashby and the very first efforts from Terrence Malick, and that stuff still moves me deeply. But it's all very handmade. I mean, you have to, I don't know that those films get made, any films get made anymore, other than like I Made Sweetland on the dining room table. And I might get to a point in my life where I feel like I don't need to make money for the next few months. I could go in and do this and make a film. I don't know what it would be. I think that's my biggest thing, is I don't know what it would be. And until I know that story that is burning in my belly that needs to be told, it's not worth the effort. You have to really feel like, not like, even, I think it's even beyond I want to tell this story. I think it gets into this story needs to be told. And I think that sort of, that might be too altruistic, but that sort of altruism is what drives you through 2 years of getting a thing made. And then you start the battle of getting it seen. Like you just mentioned, like, how does $1 million film get seen, Yeah. So I would love to do it again. I don't know what it is. And I don't have that burning passion that a story needs to be told. But when I find it, you and I will go do it together.
I feel like, it's funny, actually, you talking about that and the time that it makes and the passion that it must take to especially if you're writing something and then directing it, and then you don't really think about all the process before, during, and after. It's years of your life. And we had a guest on the other day that basically was saying, if you do any project as a director, you've got to think, well, in my lifetime, how many movies, how many series, how many things am I actually going to do? It's a huge percentage. Each job, each project is a huge percentage of your career. So it really, I mean, when you come to decide if you're going to do a film or a project, TV, like, doing Secret Invasion, especially with Secret Invasion, I mean, it's a 6-part series. That's a big chunk. You have to kind of think about where you had to come to, obviously, to London, and there was various locations on that, but What is the criteria when you're kind of looking and going, all right, I'm going to commit to this job, because it's a pretty big chunk.
Yeah, it's a good question, and I don't really know the answer, because it's all a little different the way these things come into my life. Sweetland was, like I said, a lot of naivete, a lot of passion, a lot of like, it just stayed with me. It ultimately, I think, from the time I read the story until the time it sort of like left its distribution, it was in the theaters for a long time for an independent film, and then it made the Netflix round, and then it made the Apple TV round, and now it's sitting somewhere on Prime or something, which is amazing for a film that's that old to still be available. But soup to nuts, as we say, from the time I read until the time I felt like I don't need to work on this every day, was 19 years. 19 years. That's like a big portion of my life. And again, I raised a family. I shot 400 TV commercials during that time. So it wasn't only that, but I was committed to that story and nothing else. And then, I worked on Looming Tower, which was 6 months in the writer's room and 6 months on set. And in that TV world, I don't think you ever really know, like, okay, this is going to take a year of my life. I think you're like, this is great. I'm with friends, and we're traveling to South Africa, and we're traveling to New York, and the days are great. You get to the end of it and you're like, yeah, that was worth a year of my life. Marvel was 28 months of 7-day weeks. And it was a lot of it was on Zoom, which is very disorienting. And so I think my criteria has changed now. It's like, okay, we're living in a Zoom world. A lot of this, like, the shoot is great. I know how to do that. But all this other stuff and being on Zoom and being sort of, I'm, physically here, but I'm with you on this Zoom thing, takes its toll. And I think my next project will be like, is this story worth 2 years of my life, my health, my relationships? I have a lot of friends who didn't understand the Marvel thing. It's like, where were you? Oh, you're friends with Sam Jackson now. I'm like, well, no, I'm not really friends with Sam Jackson now, but I'm back. And they're like, well, you ignored me for 2 years, so goodbye. So you give up a lot, right? You give up a lot. I think the criteria now is different than it was 2 years ago.
Well, it's that 6-7 day weeks that, it's hard to kind of get that in your mind if you've got a 9-to-5 job, and you've got the weekends off and everything else. And I know that when I'm filming, it's like, that's me for that amount of time, and I'm in that bubble, and you come out of it and it's almost like a time warp. You come back home and it feels like nothing's changed, but everything's changed. And it must be nice to be like, okay, this looks good, but maybe I'll do this one instead, and have that choice. But how long did it take you to go from, I mean, obviously you did all those commercials, but then moving more into TV? Was it a kind of smooth transition, or was there gaps of no work?
Nothing's a smooth transition. That's not life. That's not fun,
Good. That's what we like to hear.
Yeah. I mean, it's all a struggle. And part of it is a film I loved is Diving Bell and the Butterfly. And there's a great scene where he's visited by his friend. I can see the actor, that's sort of older. I think he's Danish, long white hair. And he comes to visit him, and he says to this guy who literally can't move, he can only blink one eye. That's how he communicates. He's had a brain damage, and his body doesn't work. And his friend who visits him says, always hang on to what's human inside of you. And I think that's the ticket to all of this, is once we let go of that and we turn over to anxiety about getting jobs, anxiety about Hollywood, anxiety about what's in it, so I think my time during building this career was spent raising family, being myself, figuring out who that was. You know, I still go to therapy. I'm like the best of us. But I would go gaps. I mean, 2 years without a phone call, you know, and you just got to hang on like, okay, that's that, but that's not me. That's something that I do when I can do it. And when I can't do it, I better be doing something to be me, to hang on to what's human inside me, or I'm nothing. Like at that point, next time the phone rings, I'm not going to be good at my job, because that's what I bring to the job, is not an encyclopedic knowledge of shots or films, but a sense of humanity, a sense of story, a sense of love, a sense of hate, a sense of conflict, and all of those things are in life. So I think, yes, it's a bumpy road, but everything I did during that bumpy road was time well spent. It was all valuable to me.
I really like that. I think that's, yeah, no, you did. I think that's a really nice, positive way of putting it as well. I think no matter what realm you're in the film industry, if it be an actor, producer, director, whatever it may be, I think everyone has, I mean, I don't believe there's anyone in the industry that hasn't had that struggle in between jobs and almost like linking yourself too strongly with your job. And if you don't have the job, then what are you? You know, there is that kind of struggle. But then, you know, there's also that thing of when you get a great job, then there's that imposter syndrome, so you can't win. And that is why you know, therapy is so important. And we're sponsored by BetterHelp, so we talk a lot about mental health, and especially being an actor. I mean, a lot of time out of work, and one thing that keeps me sane is writing. So, you know, when you talking about your script and saying that actually it wasn't written, it was felt, that really that really makes sense to me, that it's not always a structured thing when you're writing. It can be a feeling. I think that's really interesting. But to change the subject slightly, in terms of your new show, now that you've had, like, the show is out there and it's had such a positive reaction from the fans and everything else, do you think that that you'll be going back into the world of Marvel anytime soon? Are you I mean, say again, like, to make the choice to say, right, this is going to be another couple of years, but is it something that you'd like to sort of delve back into at some point? If you're allowed to say. I don't know if you're allowed to say.
Yeah, I mean, I loved it. I loved the process. I loved the cast. I loved the crew. I loved the storytelling. Marvel is in many ways the pinnacle of storytelling in the industry today. You know, if the story was right and I felt it needed to be told and they felt that I needed to help them tell it, I think it would be a great partnership. Ultimately, I want to tell stories that matter, that move people. I think Secret Invasion has moved many people for whatever reason. They've felt it. It's great to have a dialogue with the audience, you know, to put something up and have millions of people watch it, rather than, you know, when we made Sweetland, I'm willing to bet that I shook hands with everybody who saw it, every last person who saw it, you know, and it might have been, I don't know, 600,000 people, like at the festivals and the Q&A after the commercial screenings. And that's a very different world than you put up the Marvel trailer and 163 million people watch it in the first day. You know, that's a different dialogue, and it's thrilling in a way. And we want that. Filmmakers want that. Actors want that. You want to have that dialogue with the audience, but you know, it has to be right. So if I'm not right for them and the story's not right for me, then I'll do something different. And if it is right, I can hardly wait to dive back into that world.
Most embarrassing moments, yeah.
I'm trying to remember now. I think I did ask you this before, but I can't remember what the answer was.
The answer was I've been to so much therapy that I don't really think in terms of embarrassing moments. But
oh, that was it. I was trying to think. I was like, I can't think of a story. I swear there wasn't a story. Oh, okay, okay. Have you had a chance to think if there's anything you'd like to share, or we can leave it at that?
I mean, I can remember back to embarrassing moments. I can remember back to shitty things I did, and they have all fueled me in therapy to understand more, like, oh, I see why we don't behave that way, or we do behave that way. So, I mean, some of them seem like silly. Like, I saw a guy when I was in college. I saw a guy in a sweater, like a crew neck sweater, and I really liked the way that looked. And I went to the store and I bought the first one that I saw, and it kind of looked like him, kind of preppy crew neck. It was brown, and I wore it to school the next day, and I didn't realize how much synthetic was in it because I didn't think about that. I didn't understand back in that world. So I think it was almost all polyester with a little bit of wool in the sweater. And I got called on that day this was in college. I got called on to perform a scene from Shakespeare with two other, a woman and a guy from the class. And we had to memorize it. We had to get up and we had to do it. And I got called on to do it. And I was sweating buckets in this synthetic shirt. And then we had to do a Q&A, which I thought was really weird. Like, why did you make that choice? Why did you make that choice as an actor? And I'm like, first of all, I'm not an actor. And second of all, I didn't make any choice. I just got through it. But we had to stand up in front of the class. And I was so warm and lightheaded that I leaned against the slate chalkboard. And I did this Q&A for 15 minutes. And then I went to sit down. But by the time I got to my seat, I looked up. I had left a dripping pile of condensation on the chalkboard. And I sat there and I watched it for the remaining 40 minutes of class, and it never dried. And yeah, it was mortifying, but I learned a lesson. I learned a lesson about synthetics. You should go shopping with me sometime. I'm like, how much synthetic is in this shirt? How much synthetic is in this? Because I only wear cotton and wool. And they're like, well, the new fabrics are really, I'm like, nope, you weren't in that Shakespeare class when the board was condensed and dripping. And so so it's like stuff like that. But I love that. I laugh about it now. I don't blush.
But you've carried that with you. I love that you've learned from it, and now you go shopping and you're like, nah, I'm not having that. I need to have pure wool.
Yep. I learned about synthetics.
And I think that's the perfect way to end this podcast. Okay. But as always, lovely to chat to you, and all the best with the rest of the show. I mean, it's nearly all out there now. So yeah, all the best with it, man. And thank you again.
Thank you. I hope you continue to enjoy the show. And if you need to do this again, I'm happy to do it again.
Brilliant. Hopefully, well, with your next project, we'll have a break. And then when you've got your next thing coming up, we'll have another chat. If you're up for it, that would be great.
I look forward to it.
Awesome. Thank you, Ali.
It's a Life in Film, motherfucker. Subscribe and like and follow.
Thank you to our guest, Ali. And thank you to Charlotte and the rest of the team at IDPR. And as always, thank you to our sponsor, BetterHelp.